Thanks for joining us today. My name is Michael Miller. We have some special guests from NAMI-Miami.org, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And would you introduce yourselves to our viewers?
Hi, I'm Susan Racher. I'm a volunteer president of the board of NAMI Miami, National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Hi, everyone. My name is Estephania Placencia. I'm the youth program coordinator at NAMI Miami-Dade.
That's wonderful. I'm going to call you Fanny, if that's okay. That's
Yes.
the name you go by, right?
Yes.
Okay. Terrific. So let's catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
Last time we were together was prior to your event. That was on May 22nd, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
And your son was here, Matthew, who sang a song, "You're Not Alone."
Yes.
And he wrote it with a friend, and they played the guitar. And I probably repeated it about 20 times. So I want to thank you for that opportunity a few weeks ago. And I know it was touching for everybody that saw that. So let's talk about your event, and then we're going to get on to Fanny in a moment. So tell us about your event that was held last month.
I would like to thank you, and because the reach of this of this podcast and community newspapers, along with a lot of heavy lifting on our parts, resulted in a really successful first ever walk in Miami-Dade County. We had 98 walk teams, each walking their own way, doing everything from paddleboarding to fishing to exercise class on the beach, to one walk team made jewelry and little children sold it in front of their house like a lemonade stand. We had the walk team in Little Haiti doing a tour of just the amazing and magnificent history of Little Haiti. 98 walk teams, 600 plus people. And the city, if you're
Miami,
the county, actually, Miami-Dade County, was illuminated green. The courthouse, Freedom Tower, the City Hall and Miami City Hall, Pinecrest Village Hall, Palmetto Bay, North Miami.
Did that happen because
South Miami.
The efforts of NAMI-Miami.org?
Yes,
you
we
reached out
to our elected officials. The mayors of those villages, cities, and the county sent us messages of support. They lit their buildings green. It was a real beacon to show people that mental wellness matters, and that the community really cares and came out for NAMI and also for mental health. We raised funds that will enable us to expand our outreach, to add staff, and
great.
To continue our free programming to the community.
And as you celebrate the success of that, we recognize as we're coming out of the pandemic that lots of folks have been having social, emotional, and mental issues anyway. And then on top of that, we have the stressor of the pandemic and the stressors of getting out of it. And now we have kids going back to school, whether it's high school or college. And so, Fanny, why don't you talk about your role with NAMI Miami?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. I work with a program called Ending the Silence. And so Ending the Silence is a program for middle school, high school, and college students. And this is a 50-minute or longer presentation that teaches kids about the warning signs of mental health conditions, facts and statistics, resources to help themselves, a friend, or a family member. And it is also great because it includes a testimony of two co-presenters. One is a young adult who lives well in recovery, and then another family member. And so it is a great opportunity for young people to ask questions to people with lived experience. And at the end of the day, we want them to realize that they're not alone. And I think I forgot to say is that we've been doing this for a couple of years now, almost 3 years, and it has had really great results. I mean, we've been able to demonstrate that the actual knowledge of warning signs increases in kids, as well as the attitudes of stigma attitude towards mental health conditions. So it's just been great, and we're so happy to bring it to more schools.
So Susan, we know as people go into the next grade, whether it's whatever elementary is to middle school, and middle school to high school, and high school to college, or moving, their place causes stress on people. So not only is it important for the parents and friends to recognize it, but what about the child, the student, the young person themselves being able to recognize the signs? What can they do to be on lookout for themselves?
They could be knowledgeable in what to be a lookout for. Changes in sleep habits, changes in eating habits, a desire to isolate oneself, which will be a very difficult thing to measure because we've all been in isolation. So how long does it take for them to re-engage in their work, in their community, and in their sense of well-being? Dark thoughts, self-harm thoughts. If they're feeling any of these things, ending the silence gives them the courage to reach out for help. The whole idea behind the program is what's called by professionals help-seeking behavior, the willingness to seek help if you have a problem. It's also important if you notice some of these changes or others in your friends, because friends and young people are more likely to see these changes in each other than their adult family members.
And Fanny, we know when people go to the doctors now, they ask the questions, are you depressed? And a couple other questions. First time I heard that, I went, you mean like more than usual or what?
Yeah,
all right.
Right.
But you realize that gives pause. And I think they've saved plenty of souls by asking that question, because it makes you look inside a little bit. And I think one of the questions, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or somebody else, all those things make us pay attention.
Right.
So let's talk about high school students. You know, they're plenty going to be going away for the first time in September. They may have, last year, they probably didn't go. And some of the schools, you know, it was all offline, all online. And so tell us about some of the stresses that occurred to 16, 17, or 18-year-olds as they get ready to go to college.
Yes, so during this year, we were still offering virtual presentations, right? And so we heard some of the kids' concerns, and it was, I'm isolated. I'm not even in touch with my friends. I don't know what's happening. I'm going out to probably far away, some of them to college. I mean, from home to college, literally, not even from, friends from high school. So those were the main comments of the kids, the being alone and really not being able to talk to anyone else.
So, Susan, so when we look at the stress that people are under in the last year of being isolated, as Fanny points out, we realize that there was a protection mechanism for us, stay home, don't go out, all right? And now, as we're starting to move out, even when we go out without a mask, and it's like,
feels bold.
Yes, it's like, oh my goodness. So what do? We don't bump anymore. We don't do. And people are a little bit confused, all right?
They are.
And I still carry with me a mask in case I go into a place. And sometimes you realize how curious it is, because with the restaurants, you walk in with the mask, and as soon as you sit down, you take it off, right? And people say, I'm confused now. What do I do? So for the person that's feeling particularly fragile right now, take us through that process of what they can do to take their own temperature, if you will.
There's a lot of things one can do. First of all, I think we need to be kind to ourselves and realize that we've come through a year in which our very sense of safety and security with our own families. If I hug, my grandchild, am I going to get sick and die? I mean, that has just undermined our sense of self completely. So I think number one is create realistic expectations for what reentry will look like. Express those expectations. If you're going back to work and you're going back to an office, you have every right to ask, what are the protocols? What are the expectations in terms of office cleanliness? Is it expected that people will be vaccinated? What are the protocols if somebody is not well? Information and education and self-advocacy is healing. Yeah. And then also pay attention, I think, to your own health, to your physical health, your exercise, your nutrition. A lot of people this past year had all of those things go by the wayside, along with their friends and their structure. Try to structure your day. If you haven't gone back to work yet, start doing a work structure. Get up in the morning, get dressed, and pilot that. And then if you need help, reach out to NAMI, reach out to a therapist, reach out to Thriving Mind, our managing entity. Reach out to your friends and express your concern about these things. My hope is that there are very few things that we're all in together. Even Hurricane Andrew affected one part of town and not the other. We've all been in this together. And I think, for employers and organizations, it's really an opportunity to get closer than we were even pre-pandemic, because we've had a shared experience. No matter who we are or what we are, we've all been scared together.
And speaking of scared, last year, March, April, May, June, I was needed my fingernails down my toes, and so I brought somebody over here, and I sent a picture to my wife. I thought she'd be happy for me, and I think I mentioned this before. She locked me out of the house.
I was going to say the tent in the backyard for a week, right?
She locked me out of the house. She said, "I'm coming in." She goes, "No, I locked it from the inside." That's how afraid she was, and she thought that I didn't pay enough attention to how she might feel about that.
Yeah.
All right. And I think it's important for all of us to remember we're all in different places.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as you know, for a year and a quarter, we had pretty strict protocol here. All right. We used to have a dividers, actually several, and the big one, then the small one, and wash your hands up front, wear a tag and everything. And even after everybody here was vaccinated, we would all sit with masks across the room from each other. I said, so the purpose of getting the injection, the shot, was what? So we wouldn't have to wear a mask or give it to somebody else. I said, so here we are 3 weeks after everybody's been vaccinated, and we're still wondering what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that you're right. We have to respect people, and we see them with the mask, and fine. All right. And not to have this ridicule thing. All right. And we used to see the Japanese, Chinese people wearing masks, and everything was sort of like, what are they doing? What are they afraid of? Now we know.
Yeah.
All right. So
they don't get colds 4 times a year the way we do.
Yes. By the way, we used to get everybody here at one point or another for many years. There would be a cold every month or so. Go through, and you know what?
Nothing.
No colds.
It's nice. It's
So
very nice.
yeah, it's like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
All right. So again, let's go back to the high school student who's now been at home. All right, for a year. All right. Let's say they decided now they're getting ready to go back in the fall. All right. So what are some of the things that you can do, and NAMI and Miami.org can do to try to help transition to our regular school years?
Yeah, so first of all, with Ending the Silence, we provide them with resources, right? So we tell them, here, you can text, you can call, you can ask for help, right? You have multiple ways of asking for help when you go away. Another one is, like Susan said, we teach them about the warning signs, because they felt all of that probably, but they don't really know that that's not part of their personality, if that makes sense. Most of the kids that we have in the classroom are like, oh, I'm feeling this, and this. I didn't know that could be a warning sign of a mental health condition. So now that they're going away, they're more prepared. They're going to be paying attention to those signs and where to ask for help. And also we have a really good guide back in the office in PDF that it has a lot of tips about transitioning to college. This is a NAMI national guide. It is really good. And so we're always there. We're providing them our telephone number or helpline for anything that they need.
When we talk about ending the silence and the shame that is somehow still connected to this.
Absolutely.
If you had a broken finger, say, oh, I broke my finger, I fell and I got this, I'm a weekend warrior and everything.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, when it goes to broken souls, if you will, that we sort of go inward, and then we think that there's something, that's wrong, and you don't want to share that. So how do we get people to open up with that?
Well, Ending the Silence has 2 parts. So we have the youth part, which we led with and started and present in the Miami-Dade Public Schools. It's available for camps this summer. Contact our website or call NAMI Miami at 665-2540 if you want to schedule Fanny and her team to come out. We also have it for the parents, because it's really important to educate the parents. You and I talked about my story and the fact that mental health challenges, and they go a spectrum. There's serious mental illness all the way to, situational mental health conditions. But they tend to manifest during that time when young people are making that transition into adulthood. They're trying out new personalities, maybe new friends, maybe they have green hair. And so for the families to understand what constitutes sowing the oats versus what constitutes something that you should talk about, and not necessarily run to judgment or concern, but just talk about how they're feeling and whether they are there is depression, and there are ways to handle that before it becomes too serious.
Okay.
Yes,
No, sorry. I just
That's right.
wanted
Go ahead,
to add
Fanny.
a little bit of sharing your story. Is a good way, an excellent way of encouraging other people to do it. We've been to schools, and almost every time that we go, and after we share our story, there's a kid that wants to stand up and share the story as well. So they need to see it, that they need to see that it's something that can happen to anyone. We put that face to the mental health condition, right? And we dispel the stigma a little bit. But I just wanted to say that sharing our story and putting the topic on the table is a great way for everyone to start talking about their feelings.
And the reality is that we always say 1 out of 5 people will have a mental health challenge in any year. It's now 1 out of 3. And in fact,
essentially that's everybody.
Everybody. And there was a recent study in March by the Florida Association of Managing Entities, which is the mental health umbrella for the state of Florida, safety net. And a full 24% of people surveyed had such challenges that it interfered with daily function, which is sort of the bar of when you really need to take this seriously as opposed to a bad day. And 56% said their mental health deteriorated this year. So it's everybody.
Yes, and there's no question that each of us, if you will, suffered, survived, or thrived, during this last year and a half, which only made everything worse than it was, before. And when the pandemic first came, I said, maybe I'll just go to sleep and wake up and it'll all be over. And then I realized I was processing it. Okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to avoid it? Are you just going to seclude yourself over in the corner, or are you going to do something about it? And we are really lucky in our organization and in our family to say, okay, we're going to do something, because the choice for us was clear. You better do something, or else this is going to happen over there. And when he first recognized that, gee, I'll close my eyes and it'll go away, right? And then you wake up and you say, this is not going away, right? It's going to be a long time, whatever time it was. And for us here, I think for most of us, we're in our 15th or 16th months of altering our behavior.
Right.
And so as we look about how we're going to move forward, we understand with there's stressors that happen. People start getting separation anxiety. They're going to go. Their emotional connection to their support system all of a sudden, where am I going? Who am I going to be with? All right. There's a brand new place. Right. And so when people start feeling that separation anxiety, I'm using that to put a term on it, when they start getting nervous about it, what's the connection between that and that next step of social isolation? Is there something that occurs to them, right? They get anxious and they go, I don't want to be anxious anymore. And what should they do?
Well, anxiety will just shut you down. I mean, we've all felt that on a situational basis. It just, you can't think, you can't act. So, extreme anxiety would definitely create a sense of paralysis in a young person. As a mom, I remember when the kids were in college, so I knew what they ate for lunch. I knew what they were doing that night. I never really asked them how they're feeling. And if they volunteered it, and I mention that because I think we have to start tuning into feelings. If they volunteered it, that'll pass once you take your test, and I think that, my advice and my journey over the last 10 years with this experience would be that we have to tune in a little more to each other, to our kids, to each other, and not dismiss. Listening is really important, and not dismiss.
So how do you?
Mental wellness.
You used to be a school teacher.
Yeah.
Right. So what got you, one, into teaching, and two, into this arena?
Well, everything. Everything had to be really, you see the kids that are having trouble, right, getting through classes, and you really go and talk to them, and you sit down, and you do realize they have a lot of issues going on, probably at home. They're feeling anxious, and for some reason they haven't really talked to their parents about it, or there's stigma with the parents. They really don't want to accept that there's something going on with their kids, right? So that was my main concern, because also I was there when I was a kid, and I know I struggle a lot with anxiety in school, and it's something that I didn't really know it was a part of my personality, right? So it was kind of hindering my performance in school, and the same happened when I went to be a teacher, and I saw all of these kids falling behind, and I'm like, these kids are no less intelligent. There's something going on.
So do kids have been able to identify, generally speaking, gee, I'm feeling anxious, and to be able to put something on it so they can go talk to somebody and find out, hey, this is what's going on. All right. What should they look internally to say, gee, I got this problem. All right. I don't want to tell anybody, so I'm just going to suffer with anxiety a lot. What can they do?
That's a really good point, because that's one of the objectives of ending the silence. We're giving them that list so that they can recognize, well, for example, anxiety can look like sweating, stomach aches, and I mean, it can represent in so many different ways for different people, right? And so that's why the testimony is also very important, because the young person tells them, okay, I have anxiety, and this is how it looks like, right? Because we've all heard about depression, anxiety, but we really don't know how exactly that looks like. So one of the most common symptoms or warning signs that we see in kids is the sweating, stomach aches. Stomach aches is it's one of the first ones that you see in the evaluations. And so something that is important also that you touch is that, okay, what can they do, right? Well, the most important stuff is that there's something that they can do about it. So we always tell them, reach out to an adult, any adult that you really trust. It can be more than one. It may not be your parent or your teacher, but keep looking. Talk about it with someone. This is the first thing. And so just like anxiety, we talk about depression, we talk about different, and all of our presenters have identified with different diagnoses such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. And so they go and tell their story and say, okay, this is how it looks like, and this is how it looks like for me, and it may look the same way for you.
So, and Susan, let's talk about outreach programs, because lots of times sometimes people go in, other times it's an outreach program that identifies for themselves, hey, I got a problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what sort of outreach programs is NAMI involved with, so that people don't have to go any place to find out, hey, I got an issue?
Everything we do is really outreach, and our signature events, Real Minds Miami Mental Health Film Festival, is an example of non-threatening outreach, where we have an afternoon, just a delightful afternoon of food and music, and 8 to 10 short films, and a lot of social networking. And the films happen to be about issues of mental wellness and mental illness. The walk was a great outreach event, in that those green lights that I talked about were really a beacon that said, hey, this is we're here. We all are in this together, and we all have mental health challenges from time to time, and let's lift each other up. The one thing I did want to mention with Fanny's program is that the most impactful thing about ending the silence is that these high school students see this absolutely amazing young person, captain of the swim team, debate team, this person, that, FIU, University of Miami, Barry, Miami-Dade, get up and talk, and they think they're just a clinical therapist or a staff member or a teacher, and they talk about their experience, and they talk about how they try to end their lives, and they talk about their journey of being unwell. And these students sit back and they're absolutely in shock in a positive way, that there is recovery, that like when you break your finger or your toe, you need to go get help and get that set. And then you could be like this person or any other person living with an eating disorder, living with bipolar, living with anxiety.
And sometimes we think that the kids or people are doing something on purpose. Lots of times when you have an issue, it's happening to you rather than you going misbehaving because you just want to misbehave. Sort of demonstrates that there's an issue. I do want to do a shout out for a teacher from 50 years ago. I was in a class and she came over to me. She said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Not well." That's more than 50 years ago, maybe, well, a long time ago. And it was the first time, like, what did she see that I'm not seeing? Mm-hmm. And so then I went into therapy and I've sort of figured it out. And then along the same line, I used to run a lot. I remember one day, I might have mentioned this before, I'm running and my running partner says, "How you doing?" I've been running with him for 15 years. I said, "I'm not doing good." And I held on to a fence.
Good for you for saying that.
Yeah,
though.
first
Most
time
people would
ever.
Say fine.
First time ever.
Yeah.
All right. First time ever. And I held on to a fence and I sat down. All right. I saw the fire truck over there. And I said, "Okay, just sit here. All right. You're all right. You're just exhausted." And then after about 30 minutes, he sat with me the whole time. And it was interesting. And so I thanked him many times for that. And when he got COVID last time, I reminded him of that he asked me how I was doing. Mm-hmm. The emotional connection that we all get with one another when somebody's able to see inside our soul can last a lifetime.
Right.
So,
and ask that question. And also, many people feel like they have to have an answer. So if you say "not well," I have to have a solution, as opposed to just listening. And that's really the secret sauce of our support groups. It's active listening. It's just being able to get that off your chest, being able to have some good tips or some advice, but not solutions. We don't have to solve it. We just have to let people talk.
I know men like to fix stuff. All right. And that's certainly been a challenge where women want to be, lots of times it's a little bit different thinking. So we all guys have to remind ourselves, we don't have to go fix it. All right. We just need to be there.
Point.
So what's some questions that you, if you had a young person in front of you and they came to you because you're the classes, and where do you do that, by the way?
Where do you do
it? In silence.
Oh, in different schools, middle schools, high schools, organizations.
So some young person comes over to you and they go, "Listen, Fanny, I got," and they start mumbling. All right. But you recognize they're looking for help from you. What are some of the things that you might do to show them that they're not alone?
First of all, is there anything you want to tell me? And well, usually these happen after I share my story. So that's how it helps them open, right? So I tell them a little bit about my experience and how it was hard for me to ask for help. And that really prompts them to talk more about it. It's more like, how are you? What's going on? Is there anything you want to talk to? It's just those simple words that really make the kid talk. And really just looking at them, just paying attention. And like Susan said, not saying anything, it's just being there. And after that, we tell them, "Okay, have you felt like you want to ask for help? Maybe your teacher, do you feel comfortable? Your parents, do you feel comfortable?" So we try to help them and again, show them the resources. This is where you can go. And we also have a helpline, and there's also a text line. So if right now you don't feel comfortable, just know that the resources are there. So really, it's just simple words. How are you?
And Fanny's done an incredible job of engaging with Miami-Dade Public Schools. And a shout out to Sally Allion and Robert Morris. They are Sally is in charge of mental health for Miami-Dade Public Schools. We're embedded in the middle and public and high schools. And so Fanny and her team coordinates resources with the counselors on the ground. And Sally has put together a strong network of counselors and coordinators.
She's in charge of that for the Miami-Dade County School Board.
Superintendent. Yep. And it's so we're not just helicoptering in and giving a presentation and leaving. There's a lot of relationship building that goes on around it. And yet the beauty of ending the silence for the parents, the parent module, as well as the kids, the youth module, is that the teachers don't need to do anything. We bring the team in. They just give us the classroom and we take over.
Let's touch on the recent shootings that occurred. Young people. I was looking at one of the three perpetrators. It was a kid. And think about, when we think of how much grief that has caused for so many families, all right? And so let's say it's a young person that's in school and it has to affect their psyche at some point. So do you know what's going to happen so we can have that conversation? Because for the first time in a long time, I'm thinking about that stuff before I would sort of ignore it.
Yes.
All right. No, it's coming close to home, right across from Miami-Dade College,
Right.
where there are thousands and thousands and thousands of kids within, if you went the street, the distance from one sidewalk to the other across 104th Street. So do you anticipate people are going to be talking, the students are going to be bringing that up?
I hope so, because people are talking appropriately about gun control and crime. But the reality is that youth that grow up in neighborhoods where there's a lot of trauma don't have a chance. And these are like published numbers, where the incidence of serious mental illness may be 4 or 5% in the general population. When youth grow up in areas that are 200% or less of the national poverty level, those numbers are in the mid-20s. So these are kids who didn't have a chance, and we have to start investing in mental health. We're number 50 in the country. We spend $36 or $38 a year per person on mental health. And so we can keep building jails, and we can keep building police forces, or we can start taking care of our kids when they're kids so that they don't develop into these traumatized young people that only know one way to express themselves, and that's with violence.
Fanny, across the street from here, there used to be a school. We'd call it the Last Chance School. And one day I went over there, and they were like little delinquents running around. You could see their behavior, their obnoxiousness, and they were attention-getting stuff. I saw one kid, he walked into the office, he was a student there, and he stole some stuff off the desk and right in front of a whole group and then ran out the door. And the staff was so accustomed to that type of stuff. So here's this poor kid, he was about this big, destined for a life of grief. So, and the county certainly needs to spend more time, energy, money with that. And I think with this particular mayor, I think and commission, hopefully they're going to try to do that.
Yes,
and to provide some relief for our students and for the other people, that are growing, that are here, that are in business, that have been suffering, right? Well, let's talk, if we could, about folks that were in a war situation, similar, if you will, to the pandemic. And if you were in the hospital for 3 weeks and on a respirator and you survived and you come out, what are some of the things that somebody might feel as they are surviving that?
Well, I mean, PTSD is a serious mental health issue. And I remember sitting at a panel meeting with a officer from the Miami-Dade Police Department, and he leaned over to me and said, I want you to hear what kids in a certain part of the county hear at night when they go to bed. And he turned on his phone, and for 4 minutes, all I heard was gunshots. So we have to have a holistic approach to lifting up our communities. We're a very rich county. We're very, there's a lot of wealth, and I think we have to start lifting up our communities so that kids aren't going to bed and developing PTSD. And there's a researcher in California who has actually scanned the brains of children who have grown up in traumatic backgrounds and defined a scale of trauma, and their brains look different. Their executive lobes, their frontal lobes are different size and so forth. So it's a biological reaction to really bad environment for these children. So.
And Fanny, if you like, could you share your story, how you wound up from your recent history and how you wound up being here today and providing the great service that you do.
Sure. Well, I always share with the kids that I started experiencing symptoms of a mental health condition since I was in elementary school. Of course, back then I didn't know, and my parents didn't know it was that, right? Especially back then. And so I was always this kid who will make this drama, let's say. That's how it started. I remember I needed to be everything perfect. If it wasn't the way I wanted it, it would just cause a huge meltdown. I remember, and I always say it because that was such a pain for my parents. I would finish a school project at night, right? But I wouldn't like it, so I would just destroy it and cry. And so, of course, that caused a lot of issues. Especially, I remember teachers will speak to my parents about that behavior, and of course, they will tell me, well, she's stressed. She's this kind of kid. She stresses about everything. And so the conversation will end there, right? Then I went to middle school and the same symptoms, right? It was a really bad anxiety, but now instead of those huge meltdowns, it was these headaches, it was this sweating, it was this even shaking and isolating, because then I started showing symptoms of depression. So the same happened in high school, college. I was able to finish college. However, is when things really just, I needed, let's say, when crisis happened, a painful event happened in my family. And as a result, I started feeling very anxious. I did not go out from my house for like 6 months. I was afraid. I was really anxious. I was afraid that something might happen to me. I remember I would cry. I was super irritable, and the relationships with my family members, they were just damaged. It was until then that a really close person to me told me, you know what, this is not your personality like people have been telling you, right? This has to be something else. And it's when I decided to look for help. So I started seeing my psychiatrist. And yet, yes, after a few months, I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. And that moment, I always mention it, that was probably the best moment in my life, because I knew there was something I could do to fix it or to make me feel better. I feel validated. So I started on my medications. I started my seeing as a therapist, and I learned a lot of coping strategies, healthy ones, to replace the ones that I was, using, like isolating, like crying, like probably fighting with everyone around me. And so until now, I'm still taking medication, and that's something that works really well for me. I'm always being in touch with NAMI. It's also part of my recovery, because I'm constantly sharing my story, and that helps me also to reinforce the fact that I was in such a bad position, and now I'm able to tell them, hey, I'm here. If I was able to do it, you are able to do it as well. And so now I'm doing more things that I really did not imagine I was gonna have the energy to, like working with NAMI, studying, and doing a lot of other stuff. And that's how, and then I became a teacher, right? So that's how I started connecting the dots and say, well, I don't want another kid to feel the way I felt, right? I want that kid to be able to learn, to feel safe, to feel concentrated. I want to help. And I realized that, yes, a teacher helps a lot, but maybe I needed to take a step farther and work on this field.
Fanny, thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
Danny's going for her master's in public health, on top
Terrific.
of working a full, I wouldn't even say a full work week. I would say a 7-day work week. So
that's wonderful.
She's incredible.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
And sometimes in your life, you find somebody that really helped you, all right, along your journey. And as we get ready to wrap up, could you tell us who along your journey in the past 10 years or so that has really helped you?
Well, the last 10 years, and the reason why I give so much of my volunteer time rests with NAMI and the sense of community in the programs that were there when we needed it the most as a family. They helped Matthew recover. They helped us recover. And of course, you know, my family and my husband have been absolutely incredible. If I can, I would also just like to reach out to those who are listening. If you have a story, if you want to have an impact on helping young people, we will train you to work with Fanny, to go into the high schools and tell your story if you're a college student or a graduate student, to help other young people. If you're a family member who has cared for a young person with a mental health condition, we will train you to become a family presenter for Ending the Silence. They are both compensated positions, and you really can change lives, you know, one family at a time. So I would like to make that pitch because we have a training module that is evidence-based. It's handed down to us from NAMI National, and it's a really powerful program. And it's healing to help, as Fanny points out.
And thank you for sharing that. Would you name one person that has helped you along your journey, Fanny?
Guillermo.
Okay.
Yes,
That's great.
And I want to say it all starts sometimes with friends, which is something that we always tell kids. Listen to your friends, right? Be there for them. Maybe that's all they need. And so just to complement what Susan was saying, it's so easy to schedule presentations. They're free. So please, if you're interested in bringing this program to your school, to your organization, to your summer camp, just please do it. Reach out to us, and we're going to be more than happy to go to you to do it.
Wonderful. Again, I guess
you.
just my pleasure. Susan and Fanny from NAMImiami.org. And folks, thank you for joining us today. And remember, you are not alone. Have a great